Hi guys, and welcome to this new tutorial on sculpting male anatomy in ZBrush. We're going to start and continue on from where we left off on my previous tutorial that dealt with sculpting the male head. We're just going to continue on from that project. Before we do that though, I'd like you to navigate towards the Pixelogic website and go into the download center, and in the download center go and find grids, and you'll want to download this grid called Libor 2, and let me just double click on that. So you're not going to see anything until you load a tool, so let me just do that. Okay, and as you can see, just zoom out of here. It's basically a grid of a male figure. We're not going to copy this, gentlemen. We're just going to use it as a guide for proportions. So if you look in the light box, it's actually called Libor 2, and Libor is the head. But on the Pixelogic website, they have the images inverted. So Libor 2 actually has the image of just the head. So just keep that in mind, that it is actually the full body. I downloaded Libor 1, which had the full body as the image on the download page, but it ended up being just the head. So they kind of have them switched around, so just keep that in mind. But we're going to use this as our guide. So you can go to pixelogic.com and download that. Or you can use your own reference. It doesn't have to be this one. This was just free and easy to get to, so I just decided it's probably a good idea to use that one. Okay, so I'm just going to hit T and Control N to clear the canvas. And I'm just going to adjust my gradient here. So I'm just in the document, and I'm going to pick maybe a lighter gray. Okay, so we're going to be sculpting the male anatomy, and it's going to be all done in real time, just like my other video. Now what I want to do is actually load my previous, I have it here in my quick save, my previous tutorial. And we're going to start with that head and create it using Dynamesh. So you can see here the head we created in the last tutorial. Okay. Now this was done very quickly. Okay, I did it in real time, so it was about 30 to 40 minutes each video. So it was done in basically a couple of hours. Obviously, you want to take a little bit more time when you do your own head. This could be taken a lot further, and maybe off camera I will. But this is a good start for our the rest of our male anatomy. But I don't want to use this one. This is the asymmetrical version with all the detail. What I want to do is I want to navigate to my subtool and go to the male head over here. And I'm just going to turn that off. I'll make these available on my Gumroad page, and I'll provide a link. They will be available for free, so you can just download them there. It's just a lot easier to host them with Gumroad. And while you're there, if you want to check out my other tutorials, by all means, that'd be great. Okay, so we got our head, and it's still a Dynamesh. Just make sure you have symmetry on. So if you don't have symmetry on, you can just click the X, or you can go in the transform and activate symmetry. Just make sure it's on the X, because we are using X symmetry for this. And I just want to scale back a little bit. Let's just go ahead and make a duplicate. Okay, so we always want to have something we can go back to. And let's see here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my floor. So I'm going to hit Shift P. Or I'm going to, I can even just press the button over here. But now I have to make some changes, because this is a project that I had open already. So, and therefore just remembered the old grid we had. But I'm going to navigate to grids, and I'm going to find my Libor 2 and just double click that. And there you go. And let's just take a look. Let's go into draw and just see what fill mode we're in. We're fill mode 3, which is pretty good. And now I want to make some adjustments here. I want to snap the mesh to all and just see what happens. So we'll go into our draw palette, and just navigate down to snap and then snap to all, and that should give us it should resize our box, our grid for our whole model. Now of course it's a little bit big, so what we want to do is well, we could do two things. We can either resize our model. Actually, we can only resize our model. We can't really resize the grid, so let's do that. We're just going to go and hit E, resize our model here, just go down. Actually, we're going to do it a different way, and the reason being is because I have this eyeball subtool. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to deformation and size, and I'm just going to use a size slider with my mouse. I'm just going to gauge it. Okay, so I went minus 100%. I'm just going to remember those numbers. Okay, so I went minus 100% twice. Now what I'm going to do is going to Alt tap my my subtool over there with my eyeballs, and I'm just going to make sure I turn on my head again. And let's actually rename this head. Whoops. Nope. Let's actually rename this head male resized, just so we know what's going on. Make sure we know which head we're using. Let's click on the eyes again, and now I'm going to go into geometry, deformation, and I'm just going to do that again because my repeat to active isn't turned on, so I'm just going to go 1 and 2. So that way I know that my subtool is the right size again. Okay, so you can see that there, right? So my eyes fit perfectly again. Now I'm going to use the deformation palette again to just move him up. So let's offset on the Y, and we'll just change that over here. And whoops. So let's just make sure we're in the right subtool. Okay. Deformation and offset. Let's go in the Y. Let's turn off X, and let's just bring that, whoops, the other way. So minus 100 and minus 100. And minus 44. Okay, so let's see if I can do. So if I click here, repeat to other, and keep on clicking, it's going to do it to my other active subtools. Too much. Alright, so now I have to click on my, because I went too far, so I have to click on this. And let's just bring it back down. I'm going to have to do this by eye, I guess. No pun intended. Okay. Looks pretty good. Now obviously I have to adjust the scale, so what I might just do is use Z plugin, subtool, Z plugin, transpose master, and I'm going to T-pose mesh, and just let it do its thing. Okay, so now the mesh is 1. I'm going to turn on X to turn on symmetry again, and then I'm just going to hit E, and I'm just going to scale this down. Hit W, bring it back up. And maybe E again, just to make it a little bit larger. Now you may notice that it's a little offset, and that's okay. We're going to make adjustments to that. Actually, maybe this needs to be a little bit smaller. His head is tilted a little bit upwards on the reference, so we kind of have to compensate for that. Okay, so now when I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and hit T-pose sub T, and it's going to bring it back. It's going to go through all this work. And then there you go. So we managed to move both subtools at the same time. So So it looks like our reference lines up okay on this side, but on here it's offset. Now I don't want to move my model. I want to move the reference, because if I move my model, it's going to basically take me out of symmetry. Because this is the origin right here. It's the reference that's off. So let's go ahead and draw. And we're going to go, I think this should be front back, and it is. Okay, so we're just going to horizontal offset over here and just slide that over to the other side. Let's see, like that. Looks pretty good. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. That looks good. Doesn't have to be perfect. You know, we're just going to use this as a very basic reference. Okay, that looks okay. His neck is forward more, but and if we wanted to, we could actually move it forward. I could use the whole transpose master thing and do that again, or I could just do it by eye here, and just use the transpose line holding down shift, and then I'm gonna hit N, and I'm gonna find my eyes, and I'm just gonna do the same thing just by eye, holding down shift, and that looks pretty good. Let's hit Q, go back into draw mode, and let's just make sure RGB is off. Okay, so we have our head. It kind of lines up pretty well. You know, there is a little bit of a discrepancy over here. You know, he's got a little bit more fatty tissue. So, you know, his chin is not as defined as on our character over here. If you want to, you know, maybe the neck might be a little far back. We'll take a look at that later on. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to use this as a proportional guide. Okay, and we're probably going to tweak it because, you know, he's an average human is about 7.5 heads tall. So about 7. The measurement of your head stacked up on itself 7 times, but the head is measured from the chin, so it's going to be measured from the chin to basically the top of the head. Okay, it doesn't the neck doesn't count at all. Okay, so basically this shape over here, right here to here, so this kind of square. Okay, so being that 7.5 heads tall, we're going to see how it looks. Usually when you're creating a heroic character or something in a comic book or even a game, you might want to make the proportions more towards 8 heads tall because it looks a little bit more flattering, especially with women. But we'll see. It depends what kind of character you're making. If you want to make something more stocky, then you'd play with the proportions. I'm going to make pretty much I would say a medium type of character. Okay, so let's just make sure our brush is working here. Okay, so there's many ways you can go about this. You could definitely just drag a mask on here, invert it, and pull it down. You could do this. And I'm not on the right subtool, so let's just go head resize. So you could definitely just mask out an area, right? And then use the transpose tools and kind of create shapes. Click and drag, and then redynamesh, and then continue the process. You could definitely do that. You could do, let's undo that. Undo that as well. So you can even use the insert mesh brushes. So like the primitives, you can go B, I, and I don't know, maybe W. So we can insert a sphere, and you can insert a sphere here. And then while it's still masked, use the transpose tools and do it that way. You know, just create shapes. And then, you know, from there you can dynamesh. Let's undo that. You can even use isolate I for insert, and there's this IMM parts with a human head, and this one here has a whole bunch of human parts as well, so you could use I don't know, maybe the male torso and kind of oriented funny. So we're gonna go ahead and just turn it around, just kind of place it there. And let's just use a scale to make it a little bit bigger. And that's a pretty good starting point as well. And again, you can dynamesh this, clear the mask, re-dynamesh, and then start sculpting. And actually, this way is quite quick. But the other way of doing it is you could append a Z-sphere. Append Z-sphere, and make sure you click on it though. There you go. And you basically can use the move, scale, and rotate and draw to create an armature. So let's use that. And it's not centered right now, so we want to make sure we hit symmetry. And this is definitely another approach you can use. And it's pretty nice to do it this way as well. Basically, you can draw, some shapes using the move, pull them out. Actually, let's draw another one here. Let's draw another Z-sphere. Now, if I draw a Z-sphere and then hit Shift, it's actually going to snap to the one below it and make it the same size. And let's just actually bring your draw size down to 1. When you're dealing with Z-spheres, you always want to bring your draw size down to 1. It just makes it easier to select things. So it's a separate subtool right now. So what I can do is I can actually merge the two together and create one single mesh that way. So that's probably the approach I'm going to take, because it's I like working with Z-spheres, so a lot of people don't use them that much anymore, but it makes things a little easier. So I'm just going to hit the E key to scale this down a bit, and what I find is that it's easier to pull out the whole shape and then create the divisions in there later on. Let's just quick save this. Okay, so let's hit Q to go back into draw mode, or you can use the tools up here. And I'm going to draw another Z-sphere here, and I'm going to hit Shift just to snap that. W. Okay, and I'm going to move it up to this hip area. And I'm going to hit Q and draw another Z-sphere in here, and then E, and I'm going to scale that outward more. And actually, I'm going to scale this one a bit more. Now that's going to be our originator, our original Z-sphere. So if we want to move the whole rig, that's where we have to use. Just scaling these shoulders a bit. Let's hit Q, draw another Z-sphere in the elbow area, E, scale, and so on and so forth. Let's scale this a little bit. Let's hit Q, draw another Z-sphere here, E, make it a little bit bigger, and let's make this one a little bit smaller. Let's see here. Let's hit Q. Let's draw another Z-sphere here. Let's draw another one on top. Hit Shift. Okay, so this is kind of mimicking the hips. W, and let's just drag those down. And let's hit E, and let's go on the child over here. Actually, no. Let's hit Alt and go on the child like that. So if you hit Alt and go onto the connecting Z-spheres, it's going to scale the whole thing. So it's kind of nice that way. Let's hit W, bring these hips back up. Now if you see this happening, how it grays out like that, you want to avoid that. That's going to cause errors. So that's just an indication, just indicating, ZBrush is indicating that that's going to cause an error or some weird geometry. Okay, so let's move these in a bit. So let's just try to find a happy medium over here. Okay, and let's hit Q, draw another one here, draw another one here, Q, and let's scale that up with E. Hit W, Let's move this whole thing. Whoops. Nope. Okay. Doesn't like that. Q for the calf. E just to scale it up a bit. I'm going to scale this one down, the ankle area. Okay, so now we're going to hit Q, Shift, and if you notice I'm not in perspective, even though my my reference is in perspective. That's what might be throwing you off, but just so you know, I'm not in perspective. It makes it easier to work. Also because my reference won't line up if I'm in perspective mode. So let's hit get out of perspective. And let's look on the side over here. And we can actually hit rotate, and rotate is nice because it won't distort things. So let's just hit rotate. Whoops. Just over here. So it's not, the rotate's not really working in that spot. So what we're going to use is the move tool. And I'm going to maybe want to scale it down just a little bit on the side here. Maybe this one as well. Okay. All right, now let's drag this out. And we're just going to keep it like that. I'm not going to bother creating all the individual toes and all that in this instance. I can show you how to do it with the hand. Create the individual fingers. It's quite simple. So let's go Q. Just quick save that. Okay, Q. And then let's just make some little spheres. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so those are the fingers, and we'll put a thumb over here. 5. And now we're just going to replicate what we just did. Actually, let's make that a little bit bigger. Right here. Okay, so we're just going to go here, Shift, click and drag, Shift. Do that again. Click and drag, Shift. Click and drag, Shift. Click and drag, Shift. Click and drag, Shift. Sorry if you hear my cat in the background there. He's just needs some attention, I think. Just pet him a second. All right. So let's hit W, and now we can drag this out. And I'm just going to drag them out. Of course, they're kind of sausagey right now, so we're going to adjust that. Okay, so let's hit E, and then go on the child, and Alt, and that'll kind of scale the whole finger. Alt on the child. So what I mean by child is I mean the connecting Z-spheres over here. So you're not scaling here, you're scaling on this connecting part. Like that. And the thumb as well. Okay. Let's hit R and just rotate this. And if we use the rotate as opposed to, excuse me, while I remove my cat. Okay, okay, buddy, you gotta go down. Okay. So as I was saying, when you rotate, it doesn't change the dimension, the length. So if you were to use the move, when you move it, sometimes you can actually distort it. So in this case, it didn't really do it, but it's just something to note. Okay. All right. So what I would do now is maybe just shift these around a little bit. You know, you could probably spend more time and make a hand a little bit better than I'm doing, but I don't really care that much because I usually like to fool around with the whoops, don't do that. Fool around with the sculpting more than trying to make it perfect in Z-spheres, but you can spend more time. Some people make a pretty accurate rig in Z-spheres. Okay, so let's add the knuckles. So I'm just going to add like that. And just add that, and then R, just to give it a little bit of a bend here. Actually, I bent that backwards. More like that. And like this. I'm trying not to spend too much time on this because I want to get on to the other aspects of this tutorial, but just to give you an idea of what you can do. Okay, so that's pretty much it. If I wanted to really be more finicky, I could draw in another Z-sphere here, scale it back, and might make it a little bit nicer. Use the rotate just to rotate that up. My fingers seem to be really small, so let's hit Alt and maybe scale this. That didn't work. You know what? I'm just going to scale that later on. It's just a little bit too much work for me at this point. Don't really want to do it. Like I said, I want to get on with the rest of the tutorial. So you can play around with this. Let's actually hold Shift P. Now, if you look at this, it seems like the torso looks a little long to me, but it's kind of hard to tell with Z-spheres. And if you want to preview what this would look like, you can hit A, and it kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like. And if you want to adjust this, you can go into the Adaptive Skin menu. It's under the tool, and you can change the density. So you can go down to 1, or you can go higher. Let's go back down to 2, and here's a preview. So A just toggles this preview button over here. What we want to do now, we can't really sculpt on this yet, so what we can do is create, hit this button, Make Adaptive Skin, and we have to, it won't drop it in our subtools, it'll drop it over here. So you see this Skin Z-sphere, we want to append that to our subtool. So we'll go Append, and find it, Skin Z-sphere, and then we want to click on it. Okay, and then we'll just turn this Z-sphere off. Let's just hit Save. Okay, now at this point, we appended this new subtool, but it doesn't have symmetry applied, so we just want to hit X. Okay, so this is not a Dynamesh right now. It's just a regular subdivision mesh, which can have multiple subdivisions by adding resolution. So if we were to subdivide this, so actually it already has 2 levels, so we can actually toggle it too. But if we hit Control D, we can add more subdivision levels for sculpting. Okay, so just gonna delete higher. Okay, and I want to go into the clay buildup. So B, C, B. I want to go into my brush, auto masking, and where are we? Backface mask, just to make sure that I don't collapse the mesh in the thin areas. Okay, so at this point, we basically have a mesh we can use as a base for our guy. You could convert this into a Dynamesh, and we might. One thing I'm going to notice right away is that the hands are way too small. So what I want to do is just mask those off, invert the mask, and then scale. Maybe I want to scale this way. I'll just scale it like that. Now it's going to do wonky things, so I'm just going to use the transpose tool with Move and Shift. Using this white circle here, I'm just going to bring that back. Actually, I might have to let go. And it's going to be a little bit wonky, but let's clear the mask and just hit Shift and just smooth that back a bit. This is kind of, I guess, the dirty way of doing it. So we want to actually mask it again and invert the mask and just look at our reference and let's just bring that back a bit. There we go. Let's just get rid of the grid because it's hard to see. Clear the mask. Let's just make a smaller draw size and just holding down shift, just kind of get that back. Now we can use the clay buildup to fix this area. And let's just release any pinching with the smooth. So obviously I probably should have spent a little bit more time on my Z-spheres and made the hand the proper proportion. But like I said, I just wanted to get on with the sculpting. But if you spend more time making everything a little bit more accurate, it might be a little bit easier when you get to this stage. But as you can see, it was a pretty easy fix. Just kind of make that hand a little bit flatter. Now the fingers are all kind of in the wrong spot, but you can use the move topological, so that's B, M, and T. And what the move topological does is it'll actually move according to the objects according to the topology. So this finger won't be affected by this thing. If I go over here, as you can see, my brush fall off actually does touch that, but it won't affect it because it's calculating the topology, and it's not connected. So it's just going to affect connected topology basically. Unlike the regular move, so BMV, which I try to move things, it's going to affect areas throughout the whole thing, right? So BMT. So this one, I mean, it does a little bit, but now the one thing about the move topological is that it doesn't work with high resolutions, okay? Because it actually has to calculate in real time the topology. So you just want to use it when you're at pretty low res, or else it'll really slow down. Like you'll be able to tell if you're too high for it. But when you're dealing with fingers and things like that, you know, I kind of like to use it. You could definitely mask out each finger and do it that way with the transpose tools, but this is kind of quick and dirty. So let's go to the regular move. Just make sure RGB is off because we don't really need any color information. And let's just start maybe fixing up some of these shapes. Now I'm going to use my anatomy model, from anatomytools.com. You know, it's a big anatomical statue. I like to use it for my reference as underlying muscle structure. You know, you can use whatever you have on hand, but that's what I'm going to be basing my anatomy on because I kind of want to make fairly athletic kind of character. And right now I'm just using the move. We're at low res, so we're just at 4,000 polygons. Actually, we can even go and hit Shift D, and we can go even lower. Now, it's probably not going to give us, maybe it is. I was going to say I didn't think it was going to give us enough polygons to work with, but if we hit the frame, you can see that we actually have pretty good polygon count for these kind of movements. Yeah, so any kind of movement that we make on this lower res is actually going to translate up when we hit D. Whoops. Yep. When we hit D, it's just going to translate back up to what we did in the previous. Okay, so let's just hit. So another thing you'll notice is that we have different polygroups, and these were all created through the Z-spheres, which is kind of nice. That's the other nice thing about Z-spheres. Now, one thing you'll notice, and that's pretty obvious to me, is these proportions. It kind of looks a little stumpy. So this is where your artistic judgment comes into play a lot. And usually I like to make my character legs a little bit longer. In this case, our reference had a longer torso and shorter legs, but I kind of prefer the opposite. So I'm going to try to fiddle with my hips a bit and just see what I can do with that. I might want to actually mask this area out, invert, and then just maybe make these the other way a little bit longer. Something like that. Okay, I can continue with the move, and I'm just going to use a smaller draw size, and I'm just going to start kind of creating the basic shapes of my character. I usually don't spend a lot of time on this really low res. I like to pretty much do most of my work with sculpting, and I think that just goes back to my traditional way of doing things. But you know, feel free to spend as much time as you want. I know that people that are used to box modeling might enjoy getting the actual proportions right away using this method and then sculpting, but being that I'm come from a traditional sculpting background, I think I prefer just kind of getting in there with my sculpting tools. Okay, so we have our basic proportions, I think, pretty much set, and we'll just continue on to the sculpting next.